Hello, iPad Nation! Welcome to the Corner Booth. We're live for our 5th episode. And right now we're just getting everything situated. We have a panelist missing, which is kind of, I guess, a little depressing. Sarah's always having problems. Hopefully we can get those fixed because we definitely want her on the show. We've got a great one for you today because I think you see this little gentleman in the corner of your screen. He's kind of familiar around Wattpad Nation. So, without further ado, we're going to kind of jump into this with what we call the high five. So let's get this going, and I want to introduce this. There's kind of a setup to this. So Woody Allen once said, "In my next life, I want to live my life backwards. You start out dead and get that out of the way. Then you wake up in an old people's home feeling better every day. You get kicked out for being too healthy, go collect your pension, and then when you start work, you get a gold watch and a party on your first day. You work for 40 years until you're young enough to enjoy your retirement. You party, drink alcohol, and are generally promiscuous. Then you are ready for high school. You then go to primary school. You become a kid. You play. You have no responsibilities. You become a baby until you are born. And then you spend your last 9 months floating in luxurious spa-like conditions with central heating and room service on tap. Larger quarters every day, and then voila, you finish off as an So, to kind of get everything rolling, I wanted to approach these panelists with a challenge. Describe your life backwards. And they're going to hit 3 bullets for you tonight. 1 is going to be their worst job. 2, an awkward relationship while they were in school. And 3, a childhood injury that makes you question your intelligence. I'm going to start with Miss Brittany Sharma here on the end and work on my way down to Tarun Matharu, our special guest panelist. So, Brittany, what do you got for us today for the high five?
Okay, so my worst job was when I worked at a fast food restaurant. The manager...
Did we lose her?
That was disgusting. So that was my worst job. An awkward relationship. Okay, so there was this really cute boy, and he was smart, and he was athletic, and I was totally flustered around him. I never knew what to say. So I decided, I guess the best way to flirt with him was to tell him I was an alien. I'm so embarrassed about that. And get together. And my childhood injury that makes me question my intelligence is the very first time I put on roller skates, I stood up at the top of a steep driveway and fell down and broke my arm immediately.
Wow, that's awesome. So with these little introductions, you're going to see a little bit of an insight into every single panelist. Marielle Taper, what do you got for us tonight?
Hi. I worked for the oil industry for 16 years and was sent to talk with Exxon's head of public relations on how to deal with the Valdez spill in Alaska. This was in 1989. And no, they did not take my advice. This incident is now used in business schools and ethics studies on how N-O-T, capital not, to handle a crisis. Worst job. Awkward relationship. Probably the only virgin at age 20 in the late 1960s. I had a boyfriend whose fiance showed up at my dorm room to tell me that he was engaged to her.
Whoa! That's all sorts of awkward.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, childhood injury. This is even worse. I don't have one. No injury. And that fact says so much about me. When I was 3 years old, my mother came to the crib and said, "Mary, why don't you climb out?" And I said, "Mommy, I might hurt myself." Oh, man. I've been climbing out ever since, okay? But I had to wait a long time to get there.
Oh, that's great. I love it. I love it. I love it. And our special guest panelist, we are still waiting on Miss Sarah Benson. She's experiencing some technical issues tonight. Hopefully we can get her on the broadcast. But we do have our very, very special guest, Mr. Tarun Matharu, who is the author of the Summoner Trilogy. His first book, book one, that was released on Wattpad, it is called The Novice, and it hits shelves. There you go. I like it. I like it. You will see that in bookstores and on Amazon and anywhere that you purchase your reading literature and material on May 5th, the 5th of next month, people. So 4 days after you go see Avengers 2, go buy Taryn's book. He'll really appreciate it. Mr. Tarun Matharu, what do you got for our high five today?
So I worked as an intern a long time ago. It was my first job, actually, and I was working at a property broker, and I was given this massive file of papers, and each one had lots of little numbers on it. And what I had to do was read these tiny numbers with a magnifying glass, and then type those numbers into an Excel spreadsheet. And that was all I did for a whole month. And it was literally the most boring thing I've ever done in my life. It was so bad.
Oh, man.
I'm pretty sure it didn't even need to be done. They were just trying to give me something to do to keep me out of their hair. So, yeah, that was pretty horrendous. My next story is, so it's not so much a relationship as how I started my relationship with a teacher. So I went to a new school, and the teacher was familiar with most of the boys at this school, and I'd kind of come in from a different one. And on my first day, he talked to me for about 30 seconds, and then he just stood up and said, "Get out." And I didn't know what was the problem, so I just got up and left. And I stood outside for about another minute, and then he called me back in as if nothing had happened. And I had no idea what was going on. And it turned out that he had thought that I was putting on a posh accent to take the nick out of him, when actually it was just the normal way that I spoke. So that was really awkward.
And the professor's name was Severus Snape.
And we love your accent.
So thank you. I mean, I used to be a lot more posh than I am now. It kind of wore off as I got older. This was around the age of maybe 14, 15. And my injury was when my sister and it's not really an injury because I wasn't injured, but I almost died, and so did my sister. And it doesn't really speak so much as to me so much as my parents and how they kind of let us run around and do whatever we wanted. It was when we were in Africa, when my dad is originally from India, but he was born in Kenya, and we were there visiting some distant relatives. And there was a beach with a kind of rocky wall, and my sister fell off it, and a family of hippos were about 50 feet away. And hippos kill more people than any other animal in Africa, more than sharks, more than anything, unless you count mosquitoes and malaria. And the mother, as soon as my sister fell down and started screaming, this hippo kind of charged at us, and I managed to climb down and grab her and just carry her kind of back up the wall just in time. So it was kind of a near slaughter by a hippo. And I was only about 6 years old at the time. My sister was 4. So yeah, that was a scary moment.
So Taryn, did you kind of like weave this story? Do you have like some sort of killer hippo in the Summoner series? Because that would be pretty awesome.
But some of what I remember from my my times in Kenya has worked its way into the kind of orcs and the jungles that they inhabit in the Summoner trilogy.
That's unreal. See, when I was a kid, I got chased by a dog, but not a hippo. I mean, so I don't know. Suburbia, what are you gonna do? So I do want to let everyone know out there that's viewing. Wow, we have 23 live viewers. So thank you so much for tuning in live. That is awesome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Anytime during this broadcast that you have a question, tweet at us using hashtag TCBWatt. If you want to direct it at one of the panelists, that's fantastic. We'll get those questions rolling. If you want just to ask a general question, that's okay too. And then I'll just throw it to the panel and see who takes it. But I do want to tell you that for the next 24 hours, anyone who leaves a comment on this video, uses our hashtag on Twitter, or comments on our thread on Wattpad, 24 hours from now, I will put all those names in a hat, and you will get a Wattpad mug. So we will send it to you. I love mine. Coffee tastes better out of a Wattpad mug. So just to let you know, we will be giving that away. Super, super excited to have this stuff to give to you. Thank you so much, Amanda Lai at Wattpad HQ, for making that possible. Tomorrow, last week, there was a viewing party that was thrown by Michelle, Joe Quinn, and Shelly Burbank. So thank you so much, ladies. They got together, and they were just live tweeting during the broadcast a day after the live show happened. So if you want to do that, we're totally behind it. We will watch it with you. So just let us know and tag us in whatever post, and we'll be there. So I do want to kind of move right along as we hopefully get Sarah somewhere in here. I am going to move over to my favorite part of the broadcast, Cream or Sugar. And this is why. It's because we put Wattpadders like you, the ones watching, in the spotlight. Every single week, we do these little shout-outs, and hopefully you get a lot of, kind of, hey, man, that's awesome. People that I respect are reading my stuff. But not only that, it's just a way to cultivate the community a little bit further. So I'm going to start with Miss Marielle Taper for your Cream or Sugar shout-outs, and we're going to go from there.
My shout-outs today are for readers on Wattpad. Now, if you just think about the fact, guys, that 35 million Wattpadders spend more than 9 billion minutes on Wattpad every month. Wattpad has a bunch of readers. One of them is Annie Mina, A-N-N-I-E-M-E-N-A, and she is one of those cherished readers. Here's an example of one of Annie Mina's comments. This one was to @Clarifications. @Clarifications is a 2014 Waddy winner for 3 Seconds to Midnight. And here's what Annie Mina said, and she read the book all the way through, chapter after chapter, continuously. Fabulous. I would never have guessed you were 16. Isn't that great? You are so talented. Well done. Keep it up. And I will definitely read more of your stuff. And then later on in chapter 9, she said, on 3 Seconds of Midnight, glad to have read this and glad I voted every time. You're a great writer. Annie Mina reads books, and she reads them all the way through. Hi, Sarah. Okay. My second call out is to Paulo Coelho with this question. Why is he on Wattpad? If you don't know who he is, go to his Wikipedia page. But let me help. On the 25th anniversary of his wonderful novel, The Alchemist, his marvelous book had sold over 150 million copies worldwide. It had won 115 international prizes and awards. It had been translated into 80 languages and was still on the New York Times bestseller list. Is he commenting? No. Is he following? Yes. A few folks, but all who are not posting stories on Wattpad, they read. If you are sitting out there, published author, and watching and thinking, oh, just junk on Wattpad, and some people think that. They do. I say, number one, think again. If you're sitting out there and thinking, I have a great book here, it's been published by a major house, reviewed by somebody with all those bona fides we all need, but nobody's buying it on Amazon, but why bother with Wattpad? Think again. You'll build audience here, as I bet Tarun Matharu can give us chapter and verse on.
I'm ready to hear the gospel. I'm ready to hear the gospel, Mr. Tarun Matharu. Sarah Benson, we are going to come to you because I do want to hear your little introduction today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. But Mr. Tarun Matharu, what do you got for us for Cream or Sugar?
Oh, okay. So my first is Jason Kucherik. I wrote a science fiction novel called Project Aspire in collaboration with him on Wattpad, which did quite well. I think it's got several 100,000 reads, and we'd write a chapter at a time along with 2 other authors. And he started writing a book independently on Wattpad on my advice, and it's called Be Okay. And you'll see that at the top of the science fiction charts quite often. It has something like 800,000 reads, and he's just probably one of the most dedicated Wattpad authors I've met before. he's just a massive. He spends a lot of time responding to his comments. Gives as much advice as he can. He's a really great guy. The other person I like to shout out is Tim Johnson. He goes by T-E-J Johnson, and he's a great guy. I've only met him once, actually only a few days ago. We had dinner together twice, once with some other Wattpad authors and another time with my girlfriend and also Jay Victor, which was really cool. So we just talked Wattpad and approaching publishers and things like that. That was pretty cool. And he's just a great all-round guy. He's written a great book, and I think it's worth checking his stuff out.
Absolutely, that's awesome. Particularly the collaboration that you were talking about, that is fantastic. I think that's when you know that your community is onto something. That's when you see not only personal growth, but just kind of that teamwork concept. That I think it gets lost somewhere in the message if you think, oh, I need to write a book by myself. A lot of books I think have come out of collaboration. So kudos to you, man. That is really, really awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Tarun. Miss Sarah Benson, can you please introduce yourself using the 3 bullets that we had expounded on?
All right. Let's go with the summer job. Worst summer job. All right. This one was pretty bad. I spent one summer as a janitor at the school. And it was basically cleaning tons and tons of windows and scraping gum off lockers, and it was pretty bad. And if I could give any advice to parents, I either recommend your kids get some crap jobs like this, because they will never question the importance of advanced education once they've done that. So anyway, moving on. Awkward relationship in school. This is kind of sad, because when I sat down to think about this, it was like, which one? There were so many, right? So it was kind of sad, the sheer number of options to choose between. But I'll go ahead and go with one awkward almost relationship I had. So this was when I was in college, and I worked on the school newspaper there. And so this guy asked me out, and I couldn't do it, go out on the date the time he asked, and so I didn't, but later I found out that he had asked out pretty much every single girl working in the entire newspaper. So that was my near escape. Yeah, that makes a girl feel special, just so you know. Anyway, moving on. The childhood injury that caused me to question my intelligence. Okay, yeah. So this was in 5th grade, and I went skiing for the first time. And so I quickly mastered the bunny hill, and it was like, what to do now? And my best friend, she was an excellent skier, and she had been doing it for years with her family. And so in her great wisdom, she proclaimed that I was good enough to go to the top of the hill. So we did. And I went up to the top of the hill, and I quickly knew I was way in over my head, and kept falling and falling. And eventually I managed to fall and crack my shoulder, and had to be taken off the mountain on a snowmobile. So anyway, yeah, that was, my mom was real thrilled when I came home off of that experience. So there you go.
Oh, that's awesome. That is so great. I think that everybody has, those little peculiar stories that they tell. I hope that as every broadcast kind of goes on, we peel away some of these layers on the panel, and so we can see, the actual people behind the writers. That's been the most fun for me. Doing these broadcasts is really getting to know this panel, and now that we have guest panelists like Tarun, I got to talk to him last week. We've been keeping in touch, and just to meet people who are so grounded in reality, but they just, when they're on the page, I mean, their imagination just soars. But you think, wow, you're so normal. Like you literature, but you're so normal. But no, it's great, and I hope that we get to meet everybody a little bit more, and as we go on. I do want everybody to know that I'm very sorry that for some reason I can't do screen shares. It was like that one broadcast it worked, but for some reason I can't. But if you've been on Twitter or on Wattpad, you saw I posted a little link to something called 2-Week Notice. It's the second one that we've done. If you haven't seen it, it is available on our channel. It is a culmination of 2 weeks of shout-outs, and it's all kind of done in hopefully a clever way, a creative way. I tried my best. So I do hope that everybody's really, really getting something out of this, not just the people being recognized, but the people watching and are wondering, wow, what if I want a shout-out? The people that this panel is recognizing, they're being recognized for a reason. It's because they believe in this. They're Wattpadders that really extend to the community, and they make it a better place to be. So if you're just one of those people, just kind of work with your exposure. We talked about ways to do this in past broadcasts. So take a look at that if you haven't already, and hopefully you'll get a shout out here or there. We'll see what happens. I do, while we're kind of hovering around this area, of course, with people just talking about how they know each other, I know that Miss Brittany Sharma and Mr. Tarun Matharu, they went to this thing called LondonCon for Wattpad, and it's exactly how it sounds. It's a convention in London for Wattpadders. Tarun, Brittany, do you guys have anything to add on that? Kind of expound on the whole event?
And it was organized by myself and Jay Victor, who's also known as Victoria James or Vic James, and it was great. I mean, the most difficult part about organizing it was finding a venue, and fortunately, my parents were able to kind of help me sort one out, and then we got in another fortuitous stroke of luck. Brittany was flying to London, on holiday, and was able to kind of time it. Was that right, Brittany, that you were able to kind of time it to join the convention as well? And that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
and for some reason, loads of... Sorry, go on, Brittany.
No, I was just going to say, I think I actually went just for that.
Oh, my God.
I ended up staying. I actually flew there for LondonCon.
Okay. Well, it was totally... very great of Brittany to do that. That's amazing. Sorry. Anyway, Brittany can tell you more about that. But also, for some reason, a lot of published authors who started out on Wattpad happen to live in the UK. So myself, Nikki Kelly, Abigail Gibbs, Beth Recalls, they were all able to come along. And then we had a bunch of other people like Brittany who haven't yet been published but have found massive success on Wattpad, and they're just starting their journey. And we also had even one author who was an author first and then put her stuff on Wattpad and explained her reasoning behind that. And we even had the editor who published Abigail Gibbs' book and also put her book on Wattpad. And she actually was in the running to pick up my book as well as an editor. So that was really interesting to have her as well.
Oh, that's
and it was a great event. We had about 100 people show up. They were kind of in and out because it was quite a long event, but it was around 100 people. And yeah, it was just a great time. And I hope that these things continue to be organized by Wattpadders such as yourselves who are really keen and just really passionate about it. And I think the key thing is to be provided with a venue. So I guess you just need those key contacts to organize these kind of things.
Oh, that's great. I think that the fact that you all are kind of making Wattpad real, it seems like it is something that is... You can hide behind your monitor and say whatever you want on Wattpad, but as soon as you take it outside of the computer and you do something like the convention, or you do something... I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be in London. I know that they do Wattpad meetups. There's a whole book on it on Wattpad if you want to participate in these meetups. I know that they've done one in Toronto. I think they've done something in the southern states as well. But it's an opportunity to get another dimension to Wattpad. And that's kind of what the Corner Booth has always been about. It's about adding a layer to Wattpad that you can't get anywhere else but here. So hopefully you are finding that. I do want to recognize Sarah's shout-outs because I don't think she got to them yet.
Okay, great. Okay, my first shout-out goes to At My Epic. And in particular, I want to talk about one of her stories, The Prince. I was very fortunate to discover At My Epic when she first started posting her story on Wattpad, and she's just an incredibly warm and nice person, and it's been a pleasure getting to know her. Her story, The Prince, it's the story of Derek, and he is a prince who has gifts, and everyone from his bloodline has them, and with these gifts he has the power to shape the world and control seas, and so but they're also linked to his emotions, and so there are times when his powers go out of control, and it's pretty exciting to read when that happens. So anyway, I highly recommend The Prince. And my second person is at Wendy Hamlet, and in particular her book Guardians of the Sand, and this is a fantasy as well. And so this is set in a faraway world full of blazing sun and burning sand. It's about a boy named Alistair. He, as a boy, gets sold into slavery, and this young slave has a strange connection to the ancient world. And so as he grows older, he unravels the mysteries and discovers that the ancient gods and mystical powers may not be fiction, and that he may have a link to them. So these are the types of stories I really enjoy on Wattpad, so highly recommend both those authors.
Fantastic. I hope that you're enjoying those shout-outs. I hope that the people that are getting shout-outs are seeing maybe a little bit of traction with your story after these broadcasts. Hopefully that's just a nice little added bonus to these. Now, I do want to move to the entree, the two questions that we are asking every single broadcast. This episode is entitled Questions Are Answers, the Importance of Curiosity, and I think we have the perfect panel to answer this question tonight. I am going to start with Mr. Tarun Matharu for this question number 1. Describe a time when your curiosity took your writing to a place you never thought you'd go. Why was this a good thing?
Okay. So when I was writing the novice, I went backpacking in Australia. I was writing the second half of the book during that time, and a lot of it gave me the inspiration for, I was trekking through the outback. I was hanging out with Aboriginal tribes. There were so many deadly plants that we encountered, and deadly animals. So I found out about a plant that is so poisonous that if it stings you, it will continue stinging for months on end, and it's a really, really bad pain. And there's even a story of a soldier who did his business in the forest and used one of the leaves to clean up, and he ended up having to shoot himself because it was that painful for so long. So a lot of these kind of really cool kind of folklorish stories were quite inspirational for some of the things that are happening in book 2 and things like that. So not quite that story, but there's a lot. So that was really, really helpful to my writing, and that took me to the other side of the world, from the UK to Australia. So that was pretty cool.
No, that's fantastic. I wish I could just be like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go to Australia. I'm going to go backpack. I mean, that's pretty awesome, man. Miss Sarah Benson, we're going to go to you for this next one.
Okay. Readers of the Shadow War series, they might be surprised to know that when I first started writing, I didn't really write much fantasy adventure in that genre much. I mostly wrote mysteries and chick lit type stories, and I still really enjoy writing those genres. But when I decided to tackle Born of Shadows, this story took me to Egypt, and not just Egypt, it's going to kind of take me around the world. And so it was a little intimidating at first to all the research involved in really making this world feel real and the characters feel real. But as I did it, I found I loved the research. I loved being involved in this, and so it was good for me because I learned also to get better at writing description and also writing action scenes, which I hadn't had a whole lot of opportunity to do as much. And so I think one great thing is when you take yourself out of your comfort zone with writing and try a genre that you haven't tried before, or try to write about something that that doesn't come naturally. It makes you a more well-rounded writer. And so I do highly recommend, get out of your comfort zone and try some things that you haven't done before, because in the end, you will take those skills back to anything else that you write.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it's so important. I mean, and it's a lesson that I think a lot of people don't learn until they make a mistake, or they find themselves in a rut. So please take this advice. Don't make the mistake. Don't get stuck in a rut. Take this advice, please. Miss Marielle Taper, if you could please answer the question, describe a time when your curiosity took your writing to a place you'd never thought you'd go. Why was this a good thing?
So I'm writing a novel live on Wattpad, which is a pretty scary thing for me to be doing. And all of a sudden, the narrator, who's a shrink in this novel, it's entitled "Passing Through," started telling jokes, and I really am not funny, nor do I actually know any jokes. And so at the end of a chapter, she would tell a joke, and I couldn't stop her. And I actually think that this may have happened when, at Fifth Project, who's a really great guy, he started this book called LOL, and he was telling jokes, and I loved this joke. And I asked him, I wrote him, this is how the community really holds together and helps one another. And I said, at Fifth Project, can I please have this joke? And he said, Mary, it's yours. Here's the joke. Doctor gave a man 6 months to live. He was unable to pay the bill. Doctor gave him 6 more. Ba-bum, ba-bum. Okay. Okay, listeners, I need jokes. If you know any short ones, please send them to me.
There are some funny people out there. I know that you were talking to at Fifth Project for something, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he gave me a joke. He gave me a joke.
I mean, you approached him and you said, hey, this is really funny.
Yes.
I think that's pretty awesome that people actually kind of extend, their shortcomings to other people that they know they have the strength. It's just like, hey, can you help me with this? And please make sure that it's okay before you take somebody's stuff. I know that Mary, she communicates with Thomas, and so that makes all the difference. But like Tarun was saying at the beginning, collaboration is a really, really beautiful thing.
If Barry 205 gave me a joke too. I can't tell that one because it's a little bit dirty, but it's in the book.
That's a good one. I heard it. That's a good one. That's really good. Miss Brittany Sharma.
Okay, so I don't know if all of you know that I live in a place in California that's called West Marin County, and we have a little bit of a reputation out here for being a little bit woo-woo with some of our alternative medicine. And I happen to come from more of a scientific background, and I have spent many, many years in this community nodding my head when people tell me how they're going to magically cure one thing or the other. And so this kind of inspired me to write my first book, which I have someday on Wattpad. It's a science fiction book, and the protagonist is a regular Western medicine physician who lives in a town in West Marin where nobody believes in Western medicine. So obviously she has a little bit of a problem trying to earn a living. However, I happen to have a lot of friends that really believe this stuff or actually practice this stuff. And so I had to come up with alternative medicine that would be so ridiculous that I would not offend anyone, because of course no one would believe in any of this. And so one of the characters that I created for this book was going to operate a business called the Center for Magnetic Immortality. And I thought no one would ever think that magnets could make you live forever. And then, of course, I went online, and guess what? There is a guy in China who claims that with his magnets you can live forever. So reading about him and his process and all of that really helped me to form that character. He ended up being quite a fun character to write. So that's just an example of me taking that curiosity and taking it to its end game in my writing.
No, it's great, and I think that's the kind of thing that makes the writing better. It makes it so that you can push to the next level, so that you don't ever hit a glass ceiling, that you're always asking the questions. Curiosity is absolutely important. Don't think that you know everything. Don't think that Wikipedia is going to solve all your problems either. Go to this place. it's a nice public building called a library, and they have tons of stuff in it, and it will definitely give you things that are just not anywhere online. So please support your local library, without a doubt. I want to get to question number 2 now, and I'm going to start with Miss Sarah Benson. This is something that people on the thread have been commenting about. I'm going to get to the thread in a minute and the people that have responded. So many Wattpadders thrive on structure, clear characters, rigid plot lines, definite outcomes. Why is it important to allow yourself wiggle room?
It's a great question, Nat. To be honest, I'm kind of the opposite of this problem. When I started, I used to be pretty much a full-on pantser, and then I quickly realized that could be problematic when writing an adventure story.
Sarah, can we take a time out real quick?
Yeah.
Can you define the word pantster?
But riding by the seat of your pants.
Thank
That's
you.
my
I think
understanding of it.
I had to look it up, people. So if you didn't know what that
You had
word
to
meant,
look it up?
I was just like, what in the world are they talking about? Because Jason Howell said something about it, and then like last episode somebody said something about it. Now this episode, that's what we call in the business a callback. So
yes.
Please, continue, Miss Sarah Benson.
That's what I meant. Yes, well, you know, the reason why I did it was I had this like idea that outlining my story would make it so rigid, and I am very much a free spirit, and I felt like, you know, I want to go wherever the story takes me. But I realized that at least doing a simple outline, especially in the case of writing an adventure story, where you have so many threads that you're dealing with in so many different areas and plot points, and you know, it helps to have a little bit of structure. And I also found that by putting together an outline, that there still is plenty of wiggle room for the surprises and those interesting character developments that come along the way. So I think every writer will find their own way that works for them. If you're too loose, you need to bring in a bit of structure. But on the other hand, if, like we're talking about here, if the story is so tightly controlled that you ignore or dismiss interesting elements that can enhance your story, well, that's a problem too. So I think you need to kind of figure out where you fall in there and what can help your story be stronger, and then allow yourself to dive into an alternative direction that helps you. And you may decide that, you know, that whether you make it tighter or looser, whatever you do, that will make your story stronger in the end. And so that's my opinion, is that why wiggle room? Because you never know what surprises will come along that will just make your story so much better.
Perfect. Love it. Miss Marielle Taper.
Well, to build on what Sarah just said, I do believe that outlining is a good thing, only I don't ever do it at the beginning, I do it at the end. I would say pretty strongly that, you know, we're talking about questions and the importance of curiosity, and I think that questions actually drive the story. I do believe that curiosity is key, but I don't think we can depend on it. As I don't think curiosity alone can build a story. And this is why I say, and I argue, that we have to study art to make art. And here's what I've learned by reading a lot, and I mean a lot, by studying stories that shoot for the moon, that shoot for art. Some tales, and I mean that with the all caps art, I'm shooting for it. Whether I get there someday is another story, but some tales only wear, tales meaning T-A-L-E-S, they only wear the clothing of good story, meaning they've got character, they've got conflict, they've got scene, but it's pretty clear to the reader where we're going all the way along. And so why should I go on the journey is my question. Sure, sometimes, as in the rom-coms I love, and you guys know how much I love the rom-coms and the pleasures that they give you, but the best ones, let's just say Four Weddings and a Funeral, which is one of my favorites, you're just not quite sure that Carrie and Charles are ever going to quite get there, you know, and that sort of, that feeling of being not sure is even more palpable in a great novel that I love by Ann Patchett called Bel Canto. I buy it for all of my friends. I love this novel. Or any story that truly transforms you. What I'm saying here is that when I sit down to write, not knowing is much more important to me than knowing. Ed Monrosie, in the Corner Booth thread that I know you're going to refer to, Nat, said this really, really well. And I compliment her on what she wrote there. In sum, I want to be on the journey with the reader while I write it, and here's the reason. I read this by Flannery O'Connor in Mystery and Man. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. That this great writer, she told us that the ending has to be both surprising and inevitable. And you know, if it doesn't feel that way for me, the writer, the reader will know, I believe, when they get to the end that I had planned it all out in the first place, and that that's not the greatest journey to be on. So surprising and inevitable. The inevitable builds on Sarah's point about the need to do some structure. Otherwise, your story's all over the place. But the surprising is the not knowing. And the not knowing is a great thing, guys. Don't let it scare you.
Yes, yes, yes. I love that. I love that. Miss Mary Taper, I want you to know that you got a little joke on Twitter from Mr. Del Persinger. He says, thank you, Mr. Del Persinger, for using our hashtag. He said, guy walks into a bar with a pig under his arm. Bartender says, where'd you get that ugly thing? Pig says, I won him in a raffle.
That's a joke. That's a joke I used in a story. Okay.
I love it. I love it. Miss Brittany Sharma.
Okay. So I agree with everything everyone has already said. I also think, though, that everybody sort of has to find out. Some people are pantsers and some people are planners, and I don't think you can say one size fits all. So I can really only talk about what works for me. And what works for me is to have a skeleton of a plan for the book. Because I think that if you have that, then that allows you to have the magic process. If I don't have any kind of structure and I just kind of keep writing and meandering, the story really isn't going to end up anywhere for me. But if I have a structure for it, then all of a sudden I feel free to play. And I have an example of I think that having wiggle room, leaving that wiggle room is imperative. I totally agree with that. And I'm just going to give a little example from my story, which is, I sort of had an idea of all the characters and how the plot was going to work when I started out. And I decided that I was sort of going to follow the plot to Twilight when I first started writing the book.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that meant that my vampire needed to rescue my girl in distress. And so the similar scene in Twilight is when the van goes out of control on the ice, and Edward reaches out his hand and he saves her. So in my book, the scene was that my mermaid is swimming to school and she gets accosted by some sharks, and my vampire flies over the water, jumps in to rescue her from the sharks. And so I get to this scene, and my main character turned to me, and this has never happened before, but she literally turned to me and she said, I do not think this is going to happen. I am a mermaid. This is where I live. I've grown up with sharks, and he is not rescuing me for sharks. And I said, no, it's going to be really, really great, because when the guy rescues you, it makes him feel really good, and he's going to really fall in love with you because, he gets to rescue you, and you're going to love it. And she was like, no, that's just not going to happen. I am not going to be rescued by anybody in my own backyard. So I finally, of course, she won the argument, and I relented, and she ends up instead rescuing him from sharks. And it changed the entire course of the novel. And I grumbled about it for a little bit, but the novel ended up being so much richer and more fun and more unique because of it. And the wiggle into the structure that I had already decided on, and I ended up with a better work of art. So that's my advice.
I love the kind of, you addressed a book that everybody knows, Twilight, I mean, arguably, it's some people will call it literature, other people will call it emergency toilet paper. But it just kind of depends. I don't really think that your book is anything like Twilight because I don't remember reading an adjective over and over called smoldering. I think everything in that book was smoldering. But just to let you know, I want people to know the mainstream stuff that's out there. It's out there for a reason. If I think as far as Wattpad goes, Anna Todd, huge Wattpad superstar. A lot of people give her grief, but she found her audience. Why don't you go find yours? That's the message that needs to be sent. You don't need to grumble about the fact that, oh man, this is so unfair. How can a One Direction fanfic, and One Direction's not even a band anymore, how is this doing well? Don't focus on that question. Focus on what she did to get there. That's the important thing. And that is why I'm going to Mr. Tarun Matharu to round out this question.
I actually had dinner with Vanna about 2 days ago, which was cool. And she's a lovely person, and she was. If you look at her book, she was updating so regularly. She was providing entertainment for her fans for so long. And when you really drill down into what she's actually written, it's an original story that uses the same names and appearances of the One Direction guys and pretty much nothing else. They're not a band. They're students who study English literature at Cambridge. Like it's not a direct ripoff. To be honest, it was more like a nod to the fandom than anything else, and it allowed her readers to imagine themselves in the shoes of the protagonist with Harry Styles as this character. But that was about as far as it went. In terms of pantsing and plotting, I started out as a pantser with Summoner, the novice, and then it slowly kind of became more plotted because I started off writing a chapter a day and putting it online for NaNoWriMo, and then afterwards I slowed down to once a week, then once every 2 weeks, and as I had more time, I was able to plot it slightly better. Although I already had a bit like a rough plot in mind. The best way to describe what I like to do now is it's kind of like you picture it as a painting where you have these broad strokes that the painter puts in. Here's the landscape, here's the sky, here's a tree, here's a house, and then you slowly fill in the details as you go along. And maybe the house shifts a little bit, maybe you put a river in. Things change as you write it, but it's good to have an idea of what it's going to look like, while you're writing. And at the same time, I like to think of it also as signposts, where you have these different events in your story that are going to happen, and you can shift them around a bit. Maybe one of them gets pulled out, maybe one gets moved to a bit to later in the book, but you fill in the gaps along the way is another way of writing. I personally think that you can overplan a book, and it becomes very paint by numbers. It loses its originality. It loses its heart because you have a kind of plan in mind, and I think that you need to be careful of that when writing, and make sure that you're not copying another book or just having a story that is overplotted and the characters don't get to breathe and get to kind of become their own, if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense.
That's my opinion on it. Well, so that can happen. I'm not saying everyone who plots or has inspiration from other books, because obviously I plotted and I have inspiration from other books, does that. But it's definitely something to keep in mind when you're writing, especially if you're very new to writing.
Absolutely. And you got to remember that for beginning writers, you're going to be in the gray area for a very, very, very long time. Don't try to make it so that you have to do yes or no questions in your writing process, where it has to be black or white. Make sure that you kind of ride that line in between. I believe it's in it's got to be like in episode 2 or episode 3 of Star Wars, where they say a Jedi does not deal in absolutes. So be a writing Jedi. That brings us to Pass the Salt, I believe. But before we get to that point, I accidentally skipped Brittany's shoutouts, which I apologize for. You are important Wattpadders. That's my bad. So, Miss Brittany, if you would like to do your shoutouts.
Okay, yes, I would. I just have one today, and it is a book called The Vampiress of Mykonos. And it is a story about a young academic named Bryce Beaumont who travels to Mykonos in the Greek islands during the summer at the height of the hedonistic tourist season. Amongst the unclad, sun-tanned revelers, he uncovers a secret history of the island's undead. The story is richly detailed and well. I feel really sorry for Calafia, who is the author of the story, that she herself had to travel all the way to Mykonos and do research there to make sure that she could bring back the level of detail that would bring us to the island without us ever having to leave our home. I have just been to the Greek islands myself, not to that island, but to a couple of other ones, and I can attest to the fact that the details are very accurate and make you feel like you're actually there. So I haven't finished it, but I'm very impressed with it so far, and I also, in my second book, I am planning to have some scenes set on the island of Santorini in Greece, and I really had no idea before reading The Vampiress of Mykonos that there was such a rich history of vampires there. So this book is going to really help me in writing my next book. So shout out to Califia.
Like, seriously, that's awesome. I mean, you're helping write book
I know, I'm so excited.
That is awesome.
Yep,
so
she's helping me.
Wapader out there who's writing about a vampiress. I love that word, vampiress.
It's a good
You're
word.
helping Miss Brittany Sharma write book too, so that's a pretty awesome privilege in my opinion. We are at now past the salt. We're gonna add a little flavor to this broadcast in 140 characters, and it's honest opinions. So I'm gonna start with Mr. Tarun Matharu and work my way down.
Okay. So it's my understanding that this section is about things that you would like to change on Wattpad or see change on Wattpad. Is that right?
Anything that you, it just has to be something that's honest. It can be a criticism, it can be an observation, just as long as it's from the heart, man.
Okay. Well, I'm all about inspiring. When I arrived on Wattpad, about a year and a half ago, when I asked people, can I get a book published on Wattpad? Stuff like that. A lot of people said, no, you can't, or if it's the first in a series, then definitely not, or, lots of kind of varying advice, but usually it was either a flat no, or a yes, but only if you fulfill these conditions. So that was something that kind of put me off, but at the same time, I saw these stories in the news that I had to research about Abigail Gibbs, Beth Recalls, Nikki Kelly, Brittany Gergeralatilis. I'm sorry, I butchered that surname. And she, they were all like massive inspirations to me. And if I'd taken the advice of all these people who said no, don't do it, write it yourself, rewrite it, polish it, then put a sample up. That's the kind of advice that you usually get when you ask for advice sometimes. And I just want something that I'd like to see more of is if someone who's looking to be inspired, looking to get a book published, they're passionate about their writing, and they come on to Wattpad and they say, hey, I want to write this book on Wattpad. Can Wattpad be a springboard to a publishing deal? Instead of people saying no, flat out no, or just being really pessimistic, I'd prefer it if people were like, you know what, you can. It can happen to it can happen to you. It's happened to this person, this person, this person, this person. That being said, you need at least 500,000 reads to even, for it to be a positive thing that it's on Wattpad. And then give them the kind of negative aspects that can come with putting a book on Wattpad early. Personally, I don't think there's many, but if they want to list them, they can. But I just want there to be a bit more positivity about finding traditional publishing through Wattpad. That's my kind of little bit of honesty, I guess, for today. That's something that I feel quite passionately about. And I keep an eye on the industry insider forums for if someone comes on and says, hey, and they get kind of told no, then I'll come in and say, well, actually, here's my story. This is what happened. It can happen to you. Go for it.
Absolutely. Go for it, yeah. Take a chance. Buy the lottery ticket. You can't win if you don't play. So seriously, thank you so much, Taryn. That's amazing. Miss Sarah Benson.
Well, and I think even better than lottery, you have a little control here in building your fans and stuff like that. Mine goes, when I first got on Wattpad, I didn't quite understand it entirely how it worked, and so I immediately went to like some of the most popular stories, which weren't necessarily the best match for my reading style. And so when I actually started getting ready to post my story, I discovered the share your stories and other things like that. And then when I would read someone I would enjoy, they would often recommend other stories to me. And before I knew it, I had a whole new world of options to read that I had no clue was available on Wattpad. So this is my advice based on learning that. Some of the best stories on Wattpad are undiscovered. Go search out the treasures.
Love it. It is a treasure hunt. It is a treasure hunt. Thank you, Sarah.
Good.
Miss Marielle Taper.
Well, it doesn't look like we're going to have time for a mailbag today, so I just want to say to at Thoughts on Paper, who sent a question, and at Shelley Burbank, that we will get your questions on next time. We promise, and we apologize to you for not making it to mailbag today, but we've had a really wonderful time here. Here's my 140 characters, which is, I'm going to try to do this in 140 characters, maybe 95. What is Wattpad? If it's about you, you end up with you. If it's about others, you end up with community.
Beautiful.
Aww.
I love it. I love it. That should be in a fortune cookie. That's awesome. Miss Brittany Sharma.
Okay, mine this week I decided to make it about writing. So, things to ban from Chapter 1. Alarm clocks, backstory, long character descriptions, tea, and car rides down dusty, abandoned, winding roads.
And that's in the first chapter?
That's it. Yeah, don't put any of those things in your first chapter is my recommendation.
Okay, so nobody read my book because I do all of those things.
I have to say, a little backstory is helpful. Don't eliminate all backstory, folks. We need narration, okay?
Oh man!
I said no long backstory.
Okay.
That's great. I love it. There are I think it was oh man, I can't remember who said it. It was one of my the first month that I was on Wattpad, and somebody said, whatever you do, do not start your book in a dream. And I do that, and so it's just whoops. And the way that I see it, just to kind of give you something for this, rules are meant to be broken. You just have to break them in your own style. So don't do it like Inception. Don't start off where Leonardo DiCaprio is waking up on a beach and you don't realize what's going on. Give it your own style. So yeah, I guess maybe somebody's gonna argue with me on that point, but I'll be glad to argue with you. I do want to tell you, everyone that's on our thread right now and been posting, to enter to win a Wattpad mug in the next 24 hours. Please talk to us on our thread about what resources you use to appease your curiosity. And we'll actually put those names into a hat. Like I said, if you use our hashtag on Twitter or Facebook in the next 24 hours, those entries will also go down as well. Mr. Tarun Matharu, thank you so much for being a guest panelist today. I hope that you come back, and especially with the launch of your book, as soon as things kind of calm down. That's May 5th, as a reminder. May 5th, The Novice, the Summoners trilogy finally releases to your library, hopefully. And we want you to come back, Tarun, because it was an absolute blast having you here.
Sorry if I went on for too long for some of my questions.
Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
You were great. You were great, Tarun.
I think everybody's going to love you. Everybody's going to love you. So,
wonderful.
We are now at
Wonderful.
Check Please. It's just kind of a wrap-up of the discussion. I hope that everything that's been said here, you can get some sort of takeaway. We had a lot of different perspectives tonight. This is usually where we do mailbag, and Mary did talk about that. I'm very sorry that we kind of overextended ourselves a little bit tonight, but it was all great content in my opinion. If you do have any questions, comments, concerns, please forward them to any one of us on the panel. We'll be happy to address them as they come in. And last but not least, I want to talk about Just Write It, which is a hashtag that's available on Twitter. It's also going around on Facebook. It is a challenge to write 10,000 words in 30 days. And so this month they're approaching it from humor. Every Monday night they do a Twitter chat with the Wattpad 4, and it's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They do a series of questions over the entire hour. It's a lot of fun. I'll be there tomorrow night. Hope to see you there. Everything that Wattpad has done for us as far as the promotional tools that we saw today on Facebook and Twitter, the shout-outs that we get on the actual site Wattpad, thank you so much, Wattpad headquarters, for supporting this project. It's unbelievable to have your support behind us, and in such amazing, amazing quantity. Thank you, Wattpad Nation, for tuning in. We still have 17 viewers listening live, which is awesome. We will see you next week, same time, same great channel. Please subscribe. Everybody, say goodnight.
Good night.
Night.
Good night. Thank you.